Congressman Fattah has been identified by Time magazine as one of the 50 most promising leaders of our nation. He has been a guest on NBC's Meet the Press, and he's been on Chris Matthews' Hardball. Let's give a good Ohio welcome to Congressman Chaka Fattah.
And I'm all for tests. But I think that it's impossible to figure out whether or not you can swim if you put a kid in a pool with no water in it, and then you try to discern that they can't swim. Now let me talk about Ohio for a minute, but let me start far away from here. Just a few days ago, a court in Texas ruled that the school funding system there was unconstitutional. That the system that provided less than $3,000 per pupil in some districts and close to $25,000 in others couldn't possibly create an equal result. 50 years after the Brown versus Board of Education decision, a few months ago in Topeka, Kansas, a trial court there ruled that, he said, wait a minute, we got a system where in Topeka we're spending 300% less than what they're spending in the suburbs of this city. Now, I was just in Kansas, and let me tell you something. You can't get an equal result without an equal effort. It's impossible. Within the last 3 weeks, 50 school districts in Georgia moved by what you've been able to do here in Ohio, which is at least get this issue in the courts, finally decided to go into the court of law and argue that this property tax-based funding system in Georgia needs to be changed. Now, I heard your former Governor Gilligan speaking. This problem has been around for a while. When we had another Republican president, Richard Nixon, he put a commission together looking at school finances. You go up and read the Nixon School Finance Commission report. 30 years ago, they said, look, as long as we keep having unequal resources, we're going to have unequal success. This is not a surprise. Ohio, you're at the forefront of the most important battle of our day. 50 years after Brown, where the Supreme Court said that wherever a state is going to provide a public education, it has to do so equally in all respects. Well, 50 years later, you look where those cases came from that was the essence of Brown. Look at the Briggs case in South Carolina in August, right in the same courtroom. 51 years later, in the same community, they're still arguing about the same issue, that the poor kids there in South Carolina not getting a fair shot at a quality education. You know it's true that this is not an Ohio fight. This is a fight in each of our 50 states. And like any war, your fight in your trench, this battle, is part of our opportunity and our necessity to win across the board.
I'm John OBrien, and in preparing for this rally for some time, I thought a lot about back when I first began teaching deaf and hard of hearing students in southeastern Ohio. Back to a time when teachers were genuinely respected as professionals, qualified to develop curricula and the necessary measures to check progress, when we were trusted to assess students in a variety of meaningful ways that took into account what educators, not legislators, know about children. Primarily, that they start school with drastically different degrees of readiness and learn at different rates and in vastly different ways. Bureaucrats now determine what we will teach and how high the stakes will be, arbitrarily deciding the standards for success. When students fail, the schools are blamed. This merry-go-round must be stopped. Can you imagine doctors being faulted for the rising number of patients with asthma? Can you imagine bankers being blamed for the struggling economy while measuring progress relative to their academic and linguistic needs? No Child Left Behind dictates that every child, the newly arrived international child who doesn't yet speak English, the deaf child whose first language is sign, the child still struggling to read, many grade levels behind, that every child take and pass the same one-size-fits-all test or suffer the consequences. You tell me who this law benefits. Not special needs students, not inner city students, not the rural poor, and not the children with limited English proficiency. So who is left? No Child Left Behind is one more scare tactic, and we are here to say that we will not be controlled by fear or bullying. Yeah!